Good afternoon again. It's good to have you back for the last session of the day. This session explores Korea's policies, technologies, and businesses on the circular economy. The first presenter to open up the session is Mr. Sang-hyuk An, Senior Deputy Director of the Resource Circulation Bureau from the Ministry of Environment. He's here to talk to us about the action plan for the K-circular economy. Please welcome him to the podium.
예, 안녕하세요.
Nice to meet you. I am from the Ministry of Environment. My name is An Sang-hyuk. So today I'm going to present on the Circular Economy Action Plan for the transition to a circular economy. Last year, the Ministry of Environment has created the ENG, the action plan for the implementation plan for the circular economy. And well, that is not the key topic of my presentation, but actually our action plan for this year to go into the circular economy. So waste disposal policies of Korea has been focused on safe treatment and safe disposal of those wastes. So in 2018, in order to transform into the resource circular economy, we have created the Framework Act on Resource Circulation. And the master plan for the resource treatment was created in 2020. And with the COVID-19, plastic waste increased. So a zero plastic plan was also introduced in 2020. However, waste continued to grow. And recyclable materials had non-recyclable components included. So that is why it was so hard to recycle resources. So this year, at the Ministry of Environment, these are our key three challenges. First, we are trying to reduce the waste generation from source. And second is to advance the collection system to reduce inconvenience to the public. That includes enhancing the public sector's collection and disposal and also improving the sorting efficiency. The third challenge shows like added value recycling of waste resources, including recycling of high quality metals or materials, and also activating the chemical recycling. These are some detailed plans. First, to reduce the generation of waste from source. In the past, when there were like major waste generated, we have selected 18 major waste generating industries based on their volume and wanted to decrease their generation. But it is not just about setting the limit today, but we are also providing them with a subsidy to build facilities to dispose or handle the waste. And second, we are planning to impose the fines imposed for the waste generation. Actually, in Korea, currently our volume or the level of waste charge is 1/3 or 1/7 of some EU level, and we are trying to increase it to the level of other EU countries. And we had an increase in the food delivery containers. Actually, those waste generated from the food delivery had been in the blind zone. However, from now on, we will set some restrictions or standards so that the thickness of the delivery containers can be controlled, and not the plastic but maybe paper can be used for those food containers. And for 19 industries, we have set 8 categories for the use of disposable items, and those categories will gradually increase. So you can see not these are some restrictions, but also we also have some facilitating actions. So at movie theater or funeral homes or food delivery stores, we want to facilitate the use of multi-use containers. So we would be supporting them with the cleaning fee for the multi-use container. Next is the generation of recyclable materials and products. The ones you see here are very hard to recycle. So before introducing them into the market, we want to do the evaluation to see whether it is easy to recycle or not, and those recyclability will be marked on the cover of the product. You can see that red mark, red arrow there. And in the past, when we were doing the evaluation, we evaluated what are the materials or what are the structures. And not just that, but also weight, thickness, and proportion will be evaluated. And after the evaluation, when it is deemed that they are not easily recyclable, they will have higher recycling charge. So if it's easy to recycle, their charge will be reduced by 50%. And if it's difficult to recycle, they will have 20% extra charge. In the past, we only had this kind of differentiated charging for PET bottles, but now that will expand to other kinds of resources. Next is the expansion of demand for renewable raw materials and recycled product. In the past, we only had like a glass manufacturers or other plastic material manufacturers, and they were set with certain proportion to use those recycled material. And from now on, the companies that use more than 10,000 tons of plastic, they are imposed with the mandatory rate for using recycled raw material. So by 2030, they will be imposed with a target of 30% use of recycled raw material. And that kind of recycled raw material use can be stated on the cover of the plastic. And companies using a lot of plastic materials are enforced with the compulsory recycled raw material use. So today, even when we collect recyclable resources or materials, there are difficulties in recycling them, and there are some regulations or stated laws or rules to be used for that recycling. For example, there are regulations on where those materials can be stored and who can do the delivery and transportation of those recyclable materials. So those were too much restrictions. So as you can see in number 3, we are introducing the notification on circular resources. So when the circular resources are announced by the ministry, then the companies can have more freedom in how they store or transport them. And we will have the regulatory sandbox. So when there are like a new circular economy or circular waste, well, the regulation creation could lag behind the industry. So in that case, we will have regulatory sandbox for the circular economy so that even without the proper regulation being introduced, temporary permits and special cases could be allowed. Next is the reinforcement of responsibility for public collection and disposal. In the past, when these items were collected, they were sent to nearby cities and gu's or guns. But now they are going to be disposed or treated at within the region or the city or the district where it is generated. And if the materials are sent to other cities or other districts, then the handling fee will be 3 times the normal level. For example, if you handle your waste within your region, it could be within like 3 cents. But if it's sent to other city, that will go up to $1, for example. And next is the reinforcement or restrictions on direct landfilling. So, for example, there will be incineration first, and then only the remnants would be landfilled. So from 2026, direct landfilling in the metropolitan area would be prohibited. Next is the reinforcement of waste resource collection and disposal stability. Due to the oil price, the free market would have a lot of fluctuation. And for example, if the raw material cost goes down, the collection of waste resources could go down. So, for example, a few years ago, there were some recycling centers that were rejecting the entry of some recycling materials into their center because they were not able to treat them properly or dispose them properly. So, from 2022, there will be the transition from private sector collection to direct collection by local governments. And if there are some like hazardous material or hazardous wastes that are hard to be treated from the private facilities, then we are trying to have more public stockpiling capacity. Next, it's improving the discharge and collection system in vulnerable areas. So in the past, we had difficulties in collecting all the waste. So about 18% of agricultural waste was not properly collected. And what we did was to collect those agricultural waste and send them to a common treating areas. But what we will be doing is collect all those items that were neglected. For example, the Taek vinyl and other plates that were used for seedlings, etc., so that all the agricultural waste could be totally maintained. And apartment complexes, they have great facilities to collect resources. However, for individual houses, they had difficulties in collecting the recyclable materials. So there will be this kind of hub or a village center to collect recyclable products. Next is improving the sorting efficiency by introducing the optical sorting machine. So when materials are collected, we should have proper sorting to enhance the efficiency. And we currently have the high compression vehicle. And when the materials go to the recycling center, we have the human resources doing the sorting of different materials. So we are trying to improve the situation by introducing a standard for the sorting and also have the optical sorting machine installed mandatorily to have proper and more accurate sorting. So optical sorting will allow automated sorting, and for that installation, the government will be supporting the cost and technology. Next is the recycling of transparent plastic bottles so that we can have better recycling and reuse of plastic bottles. For apartment complexes, since 2020, at the end of 2020, and for individual houses, we introduced it from 2021 to collect transparent PET bottles separately. And if you look at the number 3 here, it shows the utilization. Even when waste PET bottles were collected, they were not used for the food industry, maybe because the waste PET, even after the treatment, could have some harmful substance. However, now with the cooperation, through the cooperation with the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety, we will be using a new standard. We will be introducing a new standard so that they can be used for the food container. Next is the foundation for recycling of high quality materials. So in rural areas or remote areas where they don't have those collection centers, we are going to open them at the village markets or some central areas so that people can do this kind of collection better. This is about the battery. Actually, batteries have a limited life. Waste battery thus, when, for example, when we have more electric vehicles, etc., we will have more waste battery, and the government will make evaluation on the stages or the levels of the waste battery, and there will be 4 major collection centers for waste battery from electric vehicles. Also, there will be waste solar panels to be stored and reused. For the waste battery from e-vehicle, at Pohang, there will be the waste battery resource circulation cluster created. And for the waste solar panel, well, it has longer lifespan, like 20 to 30 years lifespan. That is longer than the waste battery of e-vehicle. And for that, we are trying to create this kind of recycling and collection system. Next is the chemical recycling of plastic. So it is to use the heat to recycle the waste plastic. And actually, currently, chemical recycling of waste plastic was less than 1%, but within 10 years, Ministry of Environment is trying to enhance that chemical recycling ratio. So that kind of heat-induced recycling was only used for the chemical industry. However, what we are trying to do is to use for naphtha extraction and other petrochemical processes. And when companies adopt this chemical recycling, the government will provide additional incentives of extended producer responsibility. And in the private sector, of course, we will have those facilities, but they will be very small sized. So by 2026, the government will have like 10 additional places for the public pyrolysis. And at the Ministry of Energy, it is trying to verify the input of pyrolysis oil to turn them into crude oil. And the verification project is being carried out by the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. Next is about, it's just for reference sake. Anyways, this is about the newly introduced disposable cup deposit system. Actually, it was planned to be introduced next month. However, the government understood that it was too much pressure for businesses, so the government made the adjustment to introduce the system from December this year. So just to briefly introduce the system to you, every year, about 2.5 billion disposable cups are used in Korea, and only 5% of them are being recycled. So the government is trying to facilitate the use of multi-use cups, and that is why the government is trying to introduce this disposable cup deposit system. About 100 brands in Korea and their stores, like 38,000 stores, are to be applied with this system. And annually, we are going to reduce the use of disposable cups by 2.3 billion. So what happens is, at stores, there will be a label when customers buy the drink, and when the customer returns the cup, the store will read the label and return the deposit to the customer. So at stores, they will keep store of those disposable cups and send it to the collector so that it can be recycled later. For plastic cups, we will create flakes after that, and for paper cups, we will also collect them separately to manufacture pulp. There are some concerns from the industry. For example, like cost burden additional workload are some of the concerns. And at the government, we are trying to make some arrangements for small size stores to exempt them from this regulation, and also trying to find ways to subsidize them to reduce their financial burdens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. An. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Now, allow me to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Hee-sun Kim, who is Deputy General Manager of the Resource Recycling Division at KECO. She'll be discussing Korea's efforts to solve the plastic problem. Please welcome her with a big hand.
예, 알겠습니다. 예, 안녕하십니까. 저는
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. Today, I'm going to talk about Korea's efforts to solve the plastic problem. My name is Kim Hee-sun, and I'm working in KECO, Korea Environment Corporation. We are implementing a number of measures to tackle the plastic problem. Mr. An from the Ministry of Environment talked about some government policies about plastic waste management. And I think my presentation is in line with his in some regard. First, the background. As other presenters already mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic is still going on, and it had implications in terms of social effect, economic effect, and environmental effect as well. And online shoppers increased drastically, and that led to the drastic increase of waste or garbage generation, and it also led to environmental contamination, and also it negatively affected climate change. And the Korean government announced to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and as part of its efforts to achieve that vision, the Korean government is trying to depart from plastic use. It wants to realize plastic-free society by reducing the amount of plastic produced at the source, and also expand the recycling of plastics. Korea Environment Corporation has the same vision. We are trying to realize plastic-free society, and we are trying to recycle 100% of the waste plastics by 2050. And we are trying to manage life cycle of plastics. Today, I'm going to focus on resource circulation and 7 measures we are focused on. Those measures need to be integrated inorganically and seamlessly under the ultimate goal of plastic-free society. And those 7 measures can be broken down to 3 categories. 2 can be broken down into production category. At this stage of production, we evaluate the material and structure of packaging, and we are implementing extended producer responsibility. And under the category of consumption, we inspect retail packaging, and we apply the recycling mark, and we implement separate discharge of PET bottles. And we also have 2 other measures under the category of recycle. First, let's look into the measures at the stage of production. We evaluate the materials and structure of packaging. So this evaluation begins at the stage of production. In order to decrease the amount of plastics, we need to consider minimization of plastics from the stage of product design and product production. So this is the background. The issue we are struggling with is non-recyclable packaging materials are coming into the cycle of waste collection and sorting cycle. And it leads to lower rate of recycle rate. And it also leads to increase of hazardous material generation. So that's why we are making it mandatory for producers to look into the materials and structure of packaging, and they need to get evaluation about the material and structure of the packaging they are producing. Paper packs, glass bottles, metal cans, and packaging materials comprised of synthetic resin, they are evaluated. We look into the body, label, cap, and other accessories of the packaging, and also color. And total of 4 grades are given as a result of the evaluation on packaging material and structure. So those 4 grades are excellent, best, excellent, normal, and difficult for recycling. So you can see the breakdown ratio of those grades. So Korea Environment Corporation adopted this evaluation scheme for packaging material and structure. And we actually made some progresses and achievements. Many of the packaging materials changed their color into transparent colors. And there were also improvements in terms of materials. For example, composite materials were replaced by single materials, PVC replaced by other synthetic resin, PETG was replaced by PET. And when it comes to labels, perforated cutting lines were applied, or more environmentally friendly alkaline adhesives are increasingly used so that consumers can take off the labels easily. So if you visit superstores, you will be able to see many of the bottles are transparent. They are colorless. And many of the packaging materials change it from PVC to PET. And another scheme we want to introduce to you is the Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR. Literally, it is the scheme to impose more recycling-related responsibility on producers. The problem is packaging materials that were discharged for recycling skyrocketed by 2 times. However, compared to the volume increase, the recycling quality was not improved much. So, what we are focused on is to making it possible to reuse recycled materials in the production stage. So we are making it mandatory to use more recycled raw materials at production stage. In the case of EU, the plastic containers need to use more than 30% of the recycled materials by 2030. And another scheme we are introducing at the stage of consumption is banning repackaging, meaning we are banning or prohibiting repackaging already packaged products with synthetic resin films for manufacturing, import, or sale purposes. And we are also looking into the repackaging for the purpose of transportation. Another scheme at the stage of consumption is recycling symbols. And we have a new symbol that indicates the coated or laminated package. So once a package is coated or laminated with other foreign substances, they cannot be recycled. So we are applying this coated or laminated package symbol. So once it is put on a package, you need to treat it as a general MSW, not a recyclable products. So let me take some examples. If unseparable metal spring pumps are attached to PET bottle, for example, many of the cosmetics bottles use this structure. And also, if synthetic resin packaging is combined with biodegradable resin or calcium carbonate or minerals, then they are not recyclable either. And if synthetic resin is also combined with unseparable metal accessories, they are also not recyclable. And another scheme at the stage of consumption is making it mandatory to separately discharge PET bottles or high quality recycled materials. Globally, recycled raw material market is expanding. So in Korea, we also need to nurture and develop that market for recycled raw materials. In 2020, we ran pilot of this PET bottle discharge scheme in 6 cities, and I think it is a common practice you are experiencing to separately discharge PET bottles. So this is the improvement we have made up until now. And then I'm going to move on to recycling part. It was a well-intended effort to improve recycling from the stage of production, consumption. However, we also need to think about the whole life cycle of plastic use, meaning that we need to extend the base of end users of recycled materials. So we have to secure a stable source of demand for recycled plastics. So we need to secure a stable sales channel, and the government or public sector cannot do it alone. We definitely needed the participation from the private sector, the cosmetics company A, clothing company B, and other private sector players join their hands. So if you visit their stores, you will easily find out recycled packages. I'm not saying that they are cheaper than other products, but definitely they are of high quality and they are aesthetic. And the awareness about the recycled packaging materials were increased among the general public. So more and more consumers they prefer recycled packaging materials. For example, PET recycled packaging materials, they are preferred increasingly among consumers. We also need to effectively monitor recycling market. Many of the recycling players are of a small scale and they don't have much market insight or market information, and they are slow to adapt to evolving market conditions. And because of such restrictions, many of the garbage collecting companies refused to collect garbage in the past, but that caused a lot of trouble to the general public. So we need to have a monitoring mechanism on recycling market. Now we have a public monitoring scheme covering the recycling market of Korea. And whenever there are market changes, we are now able to proactively respond to those changes. And we are making some reserves or lending for stabilization of the market in advance. Because of the time constraints, I summarized what kind of schemes Environmental Corporation are implementing in Korea for plastic management. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Our next presenter is Mr. Kwon, head of the Carbon Business Department at SLC, and he'll be talking to us about best practices in waste management in Korea. Please give him a warm welcome. Please give him a big hand.
안녕하십니까. 저는 수도권 매립지구
Nice to meet you. I am Kwon, head of Carbon Business Department from Sudokwon Landfill Corporation. Sudokwon means the metropolitan area. It's so nice to see you all. So today I'm going to talk about the best practice in how we at Sudokwon Landfill site have been managing the waste. This is the table of contents. First, I will introduce SLC, then our relations with the local residents, and lastly, I will talk about our main businesses. The objective of SLC is to have an integrated management of waste and maximize resource recovery. And we also aim to transform the world's largest landfill into the world's best environmental and cultural attraction. We were created in 1991, and in 2000, under the Special Act, the SLC was created, and we have been performing our missions under the Ministry of Environment. In 2004, we created an R&D department and enhanced our technologies and laboratory, and also reinforced the LTRC with the new human resources. In 2006, we have been implementing the LFG power plant, and also the master plan for the future use of Sudokwon landfill was created. So the master plan for the CDM project and the landfill gas power plant were also created. And we also continuously try to create collaborative relations with foreign institutions. As you can see here, we have 4 landfill sites. The first one closed in 2000, so we started to operate the number 2 and 3 since then. And in 2008, the use of the number 2 landfill closed, and after that, number 3 is being operated, and number 4 will start the operation in the future. And after the number 1 landfill closed the operation, actually that was converted into a golf course, and also the Olympic Games Stadium was also constructed on top of that site. And you can see that we are extracting methane gas from number 1 and number 2 landfill sites and aiming to generate additional value by selling them to KEPCO. And our total land size is, as you can see here, enough to handle 2.9 tons, which accounts to 12 tons of waste being carried into the site every day. And if you see here, household waste account for about 25%, and general industrial waste account for 57%, and the waste comes from the metropolitan area and also Gyeonggi region. This is the overview of SLC. Korea has such a distinctive waste management system. At households, when they dispose their waste, they have to use the dedicated plastic bag. So, and on top of that, for recyclable materials, there are separate disposal sites for those items for plastic and vinyl and glass and etc. And if any of those items are not suitable for recycling, they have to buy the separate plastic bag to put them as general waste. So every month, usually people spend about $3.5 per month. And for food waste, it is separately disposed so that it can be decomposed for animal feed. And sometimes it can also be used for electricity generation as the source of electricity generation. And sometimes in waste, some organic materials could be included, and in that case, it is separately sent to the recycling center. Recycled products are sent to the commercial market to generate additional value for the corporation, and for non-recyclable materials, they should be disposed in the separate plastic bag, as I mentioned, and sent to the landfill site. This is the profit structure of SLC. As already mentioned, we have this fixed quantity waste generation system, which is like using the charged plastic bag to dispose the general waste, and that generates income for us. And based on this profit, we can operate and maintain the landfill. And of course, the fee depends on the volume and the weight of the waste. And per ton, it is about $60. And for the construction waste, it's about $85. And for industrial waste, the fee is about $25 to $117. It varies according to the category of the waste. And there can be other income sources for SLC. And those income sources are used for facility and infrastructure development of SLC. And within SLC, we have some facilities that are needed to properly handle the waste, and our income is used to construct those facilities. So we have CDM, power generation, gas generation, and other additional income sources, and they in turn are used to invest in additional future projects at SLC. In 1980s, from 1980s until 1993, Nanji Island was used as very unhygienic landfill site. Korea didn't have enough experience, so that landfill site caused a lot of environmental problems. It was not properly handled, so it contaminated the soil and groundwater. The bad odor spread into the air, and there were many uncontrolled fire happening at those landfill sites, and it also affected the residents in neighborhood. A lot of complaints came in. Around 3,000 waste pickers were just rampantly living in the vicinity of the landfill. Technically and environmentally, there were many problems. So Korean government introduced some actually at the time the government didn't have the technological power to control the landfill properly. However, as SLC, we now have very hygienic technology to handle the waste, to capture the landfill gas and use it as a renewable energy, and also have transformed the landfill site into green garden and green park. So resident relations is very critical in operating SLC. And based on the Promotion of Installation of Waste Disposal Facilities and Assistances Act, we are supporting the local resident. The major role of SLC is to raise funds for residents, manage the fund, and also plan the support for residents, and also implementing projects for residents. There is the resident council composed of local residents, and they discuss convenience facilities for residents with SLC, and they also discuss what kind of projects are needed for residents. These are some of our support programs. Actually, the people who can receive the support are those living within 2 kilometers radius, which is about 39,000. And actually, from the waste tipping, we generate about $23 million per year, and 10% of that is used for the resident support. And the examples of those programs include the medical checkup for elderly in the region and scholarship for students. And we also hire some local residents to monitor the bad odor being emitted from the landfill. These are our main facilities. Our main role is to operate the landfill to safely manage the waste. At SLC, we have eco-friendly technologies to treat the waste. And actually, for the leachate treatment, we can handle about 6,700 tons per day. And for the processing, actually, we are able to handle 4,300 tons per day. We also have the sludge recovery plant. We have the capacity to handle about 2,000 tons per day. And from the waste, food waste, we also generate biogas to use it as the renewable resource. At the facility, every year, from UNFCCC, we get about 800,000 CO2 tons of CER to generate additional income for SLC. And as already mentioned, we have 3 units of the sludge recovery plants. Total capacity is about 2,600. We have step 1, 2, and 3. And sludge is transformed into renewable energy through those plants. Now I'll talk about main businesses of SLC. To manage the landfill in eco-friendly manner, we inspect the waste at entrance. So there is the main gate. So we have 12 million tons of load coming in through the truck, and those trucks should be pre-registered, and they have RFI system installed to automatically check the vehicle movement. Copper, lead, and all those harmful chemical substances are automatically checked and shown on the screen so that we can prevent the income of 24 types of industrial waste from being handled in uncontrolled way. And when they come in, actually they are buried in the site, and also they are covered with a plastic lid. This slide shows how this hygienic landfill is being carried out. As you can see here, there are 699 landfill gas extraction wells, and there are all the facilities needed to do that kind of extraction properly. So when there is like a dedicated waste coming in, they go to a separate location, and like the residential waste and the other general waste go to a separate place. And in the industrial site, actually there is the leachate treatment facility and landfill gas collection facility, and signage to indicate those facilities and etc. As you can see here, from the truck, when the waste is unloaded, to prevent the bad odor from spreading, deodorizer is used. And for the waste, soil is sprayed on top of the waste about 0.2 meters thick every day. And for eco-friendly as landfill operation, we have the leachate treatment of a plant. So from the floor of the a landfill, we collect all the leachate and they're sent to the leachate treatment plant. And the capacity is capable of handling 6,700 tons per day. And we go through the chemical coagulation process and oxidation coagulation process to get rid of all the harmful substances up to 60%. And after going through those processes, the final treated water is emitted into the water body. Actually, the inspection to see whether they are complying with the government regulation is regularly carried out. HDP can be used, and sometimes the other ones are not using HDP. This is the 50 megawatt power plant, a waste to energy facility. By using this facility, we are responding to the climate change. And we were registered to UNFCCC, and the total budget that we have received is also from the UNFCCC financing. And by operating this facility, we can reduce around 800,000 tons of CO2 reduced per year. So we get the kind of carbon emission reduction credit. Also, from the power sales, we generate the revenue of around $35 billion per year. At SLC, we have continued exchanges and cooperations with other countries. So we are maintaining one of the biggest landfills in the world, and we have one of the most advanced technologies in managing and operating the landfill, and that's how we are having this kind of cooperation with foreign countries. We have some council or cooperative body created in collaboration with foreign countries, and also provide support, technical support and training and expertise exchanges with foreign countries. For example, you can see some examples here. We created one of the biggest waste management system in Sri Lanka, and for that project, for 1 year construction period, our staff were dispatched there to share our expertise. And recently in Mongolia and also in Nepal and Cambodia, we are doing other development projects. These are some actual cases of overseas projects. So there is the comprehensive integrated waste management system for Sri Lanka. Actually, that was between September 2008 until July 2015. The capacity was for the construction of landfill size 20,000 square meters and leachate treatment facility of 40 tons per day. The project was financed by KOICA, and the project volume was $6 million. Major roles of SLC was to send our experts for the construction of landfill and to do the operation and management, and O&M training was also done. This slide is related to the operation and management and expert dispatchment in Sri Lanka. This was carried out for 22 months between December 2018 until September 2022. And it was for the dump landfill site in Sri Lanka. All the financing came from KOICA as well. And SLC was the sole participant in this project, and through this project, maintenance and operation related technological transfer, equipment support and training were provided. Through this training and education, we shared our expertise in eco-friendly landfill operation. For this project, we dispatched 2 experts from KOICA for 1 year, and we supported their overall training and technological transfer. These photos you can see here are from our staff who were dispatched for the project, how they carried out their daily activities. This is one of our core projects that we are having in Mongolia for the NEDS landfill project. This project started out from June this year, and it will be carried out for 12 years. We won, SLC won the project, and the size of the project is about $8 million. And this project is to respond to the Paris Agreement, and according to Article 6.2, to construct the LFG flaring and monitoring system to befit the regulation. It will be the first international greenhouse gas reduction project provided by a Korean company. So what we will be doing is to send our experts there for designing of the LFG facilities, and also for 10 years, our people will be supporting their O&M. As you can see here, we are providing many educations and training for people there. So in 2014, we had trainees from Sri Lanka visiting Korea, and also in 2015, we had environmental public servants from Sri Lanka, Indonesia coming to Korea to get training. So we shared our expertise and knowledge on leachate management and landfill operation. So thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kwon. Now I'd like to invite the next presenter to join us. His name is Mr. Dayyoung YOON, and he's a research fellow at the Seoul Upcycling Plaza under the Seoul Metropolitan Government. His talk will focus on upcycling design for the circular economy. And just an announcement, to make sure that we finish on time, we would really appreciate if you could keep the presentation to 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Please give him a warm welcome.
네, 서울 세아
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dayyoung, and I'm working for Seoul Upcycling Plaza. I'm a research fellow. In 2017, this upcycling plaza was established under the supervision of Seoul Metropolitan Government. Today, I'm going to touch upon how we are managing astronomical amount of garbages and wastes in Korea. And upcycling is a rather new approach to resolving that waste issue. First, I'm going to talk about background of upcycling design policy and upcycling designs for sustainability, such as disaster design, collaboration with ESG and repairing service for e-goods, followed by plastic recycling. Plastic recycling is really important in terms of upcycling. And then I'm going to introduce two cases of upcycling design. As another presenter already mentioned, until 1994, we had a landfill in Seoul City, but we just put garbage and wastes in open air. However, from 1995, we created park area in the landfill site. However, Seoul Metropolitan City does not have its proper landfill. We have one Seoul Metropolitan area landfill in the way to Incheon International Airport. 13,000 tons of waste goes into that landfill every day. But unfortunately, the landfill operations will expire in 2025. They will stop taking garbage coming from Seoul area and Gyeonggi province area. So there was huge disputes over how to deal with the astronomical amount of garbage generated every day. So this is the photo from Hanguk daily newspaper, and this is the recycling center at Yongin City. You can see there's a huge amount of garbage generated every day across the country. In Sudokwon landfill site and in other sites, a total of 535,000 tons of garbage is disposed and goes to landfill. So many are struggling to come up with the idea how to reduce the amount of the waste. If you look into the types of the wastes, most of the wastes come from construction sites. Over 50% of the waste come from construction sites. And by 2020, until last year, the share and amount of construction waste is not declining. So we have to think hard how to reduce the waste volume. The reason why we established the Seoul Upcycling Center is to focus on how to upcycle, better recycle disposed wastes. So that is the concept of upcycling. It is a higher concept than reuse or recycling. This Seoul Upcycling Center is located in Seongdong-gu of Seoul, and it is near the Seoul Resource Center and used car industry complex and water regeneration center. And we get a number of donations from plants and households at Seoul Upcycling Plaza. Do you know the store called Beautiful Store? That is one of the representative stores that get donations from citizens to sell second-hand products. So we do the similar sales in Upcycling Plaza, and we also offer training programs to the visitors. But the only difference is we apply the concept of upcycling. So this is the basement of Seoul Upcycling Plaza. So these are the donated clothes from Seoul citizens, and our workers sort out the donated clothes. And this space is open to any visitors. And we also have the space called the material bank. We sort out different waste materials, and we sort them out, organize them out on stacks. And those materials can be reused for upcycling. And this space is called Upcycling House. When we buy a house, most of the time you'd buy a finished house, right? But in the future, we believe, Seoul Upcycling Center believes that houses need to be more creative space so that the interior decorations can be determined by house buyers. And we also have this space called the Dream Factory, where people can try to repair things or create things. So if you can dream of something that you want to repair in whatever way you want, then you can try that in this dream factory. This is the concept of maker space. So all these spaces are gathered at one place called Seoul Upcycling Plaza. And some marketplace stores are also placed here. And many upcycling companies, 40 recycling and upcycling companies are doing their businesses or R&D in this upcycling center. So I'd like to take some concrete examples about recycling and upcycling. First, three examples are related with design for disaster and sustainability. The companies are Shaolite, TerraCycle, and Enlighten. Shaolite offers disaster design, TerraCycle launches ESG campaign, and Enlighten offers repairing services e-products. First, Shaolite. LED chip is reused. LED chips are mounted on small electronics, and once it is disposed, we reuse it. We make lighting instrument and send it to the children in conflict areas in dire situation. And this light can kill viruses. So this light is used to sterilize water. So KOICA, Korea International Cooperation Agency, funded the project to produce a shell light and send it to least developed countries or the conflict areas. Second example, TerraCycle. Cosmetics containers are melt in order to make a beautiful bench along the beach area. And this company called Enlighten, they disassemble vacuum cleaners to take out batteries. Small devices or components of batteries are disassembled, and in order to lengthen the life cycle of the battery, so this is a social company that can economically lengthen the life cycle of small electronics products. And another two examples of the companies who are focused on plastic recycling include Sejin Plus and True. For some clothes that are made out of polyester, this Sejin Plus turns polyester into construction materials for internal and external panels. So it can be used for small-scale houses or bird houses or in rural areas. So this high-density fiber panel is transformed into houses. So this polyester waste is turned into construction material in an innovative manner. And when it comes to the company called True, it disassembles all the toy wastes, and they melt down the plastic to make it into furniture. Plastic toy waste is a serious problem. Think about it. Kids always want to buy new toys, and once they lose interest in their toys, they would just throw them away. So, we can teach children how these old toys can be disassembled and they can be born into new valuable items. And last piece is upcycling design. So we go beyond the recycling to offer upcycling services. And these are the projects that fall under the category of upcycling design. First program is called Anatomy Program. Preschoolers, elementary students, and middle school students can disassemble their toys and they can understand how many substances or materials are used to make one product. So it can raise awareness among young children. And this program was officially adopted by UNESCO as its official education course. And in the case of OWNU, children would draw some drawing, and based on that drawing, a new product would be designed. So children would be able to experience that some products are sold under their name, with their names written on the product, so that children can learn the value of things, and this is called the upcycling concept. For the past 5 years, upcycling business has grown a lot. The the number of jobs created increased threefold over the past 5 years since the operations of this upcycling center. And we have multiple centers including 서대문, 성북, 노원, and 강동 and 송파. And Seoul Metropolitan City Government is also planning to expand the number of zero waste stores, and the government is also encouraging many restaurants to encourage their visitors to use their own containers. So these are the projects or initiatives that are pursued by the Seoul Metropolitan City Government. We have a network with other provincial cities as well. So you can find upcycling centers in other provincial cities as well. So all of these upcycling centers are going beyond the simple reuse and recycling, and they are transforming our daily life. Thank you.
Upcycling ideas. Moving on, we have our next presenter, Mr. Kyung-taek Park, CEO of KEONBAEK, to talk about the importance of PET recycling for resource circulation and climate environment. Please welcome him with a big hand.
안녕하십니까.
Nice to meet you. I am going to talk about the importance of PET recycling for resource circulation and climate environment. I am Kyung-taek Park from KEONBAEK. So today we are having this first Korea-MDB Green Cooperation Forum, and I'm so honored to have this chance to make the presentation. So today I will first talk about my company and the PET recycling that we are doing, and then talk about the situation in Korea. First is the introduction of the company. So we were created in 1975, and at that time, actually, the byproduct from the manufacturing processes were used to create the future additional renewable materials. And actually, I'm the second generation of the CEO. In 2006, we exported $10 million, and we have been selected as a global small giant company. And now I've prepared a short video clip to introduce the company. My mother said that those PET bottles that are thrown away can be recycled and come back to our house. My dolphin stuffed animal and my puppy's bed and my mom's bags and even my dad's clothes are all made from those recycled PET bottles.
The idea that even trash can become our energy resource, and the idea to protect our Earth. To help and act to clean the global environment for over 40 years. The company that had dig one well at a time. Recycling over 15 million PET bottles monthly, and act as over 2.2 million pine trees. Those domestically collected PET bottles are processed and recycled through unique filtration to reborn as the superb quality recycled textile fiber. Processed fibers are applied into clothing, bedding, electronic goods and automobiles, construction material, and various industries as a high-tech new raw material. And also, it is emerging as an eco-friendly vegan filler. Based on accumulated proprietary technology and know-how, we are becoming an ESG management partner with many reputable companies. Recycling is our future and hope. We will continually research and develop as our products are helping the global environment. The power to protect the earth around us. For us and for the earth. Zero waste. It begins with KEONBAEK.
예, 다음은
Now I'll talk about the PET recycling. So plastic is, of course, very convenient and economical. So just within 60 years after the invention, plastic is used in almost every corner of our lives. And when plastic is made, until it reaches the waste bin, it only takes 3 days in average, but it takes more than 500 years to be decomposed. The photo you see here is the plastic island created in the Pacific region, and it is the island created with plastic waste coming from all over the world. So this island, it exists. Actually, it was discovered in 1987. It was half the size of the Korean peninsula back then, but today it is 16 times the size of the Korean peninsula. The total amount of plastic that the humankind has manufactured is 9 billion. Actually, if you look at this graph, the volume of plastic that we have generated was 2 million tons in 1950, but it has reached 300 million tons in 2019, and it will be over 600 million in 2025. So we are having that acceleration growth of the volume of plastic waste. Plastic does not decompose, and of course it is very economical, but this undecomposing characteristic was a benefit but also a downside. So since 1970s, people started to understand the downside of PET bottles. So that is when we first started to have the recycling of PET bottles. So companies like us since 1980s started to recycle PET bottles. So this photo you see here is how PET bottle is recycled. So I will explain this process. First, when you drink something from the bottle, PET bottle, it is separately collected and then recovered according to the material like PET, PP, and PE, and it goes to the washing facility and have the classification to be crushed into flakes. Those flakes actually go through the chipping process to get rid of the impurities, and it goes through the recycling process to create the staple fiber and filament PET bottle and sheets. And through that process, recycled products can be manufactured. Actually, fiber materials, they are used for the filling of the seats in car and also for clothes as well. When PET bottles are recycled, the energy consumption and CO2 emission is much lower than using the raw material. It reduces about 80% of energy consumption and CO2 emission. At KEONBAEK, when we are converting flake to chip, we actually can skip that process through our technology, additionally reducing the energy consumption and carbon emission. In Korea, if you look at household waste, there are like plastic, vinyl, and paper pack. And if you look at the graph, the picture at the bottom, at the top, actually, we have high rate of collection and recycling for paper pack, but for plastic, it is not that well recycled. In Korea, plastic being dumped in Korea was 6,000 tons in 2015, but it went up to 11,000 tons in 2019. With the COVID pandemic, we had a lot of increase in food delivery, and we expect that the actual number of plastic being dumped would have increased during the COVID period. So as already mentioned, in Korea, we have about 80% of recycling rate for PET bottles, but before 2000, it was just separately discharged. So colored plastic bottles and transparent plastic bottles were discharged together, creating additional cost for cleaning and sorting. And in the end, the color differentiation was not done properly, so the final raw material or the final recycled material had low quality. Thus, as the speaker from the Ministry of Environment has said, at the Ministry of Environment, since 2005, since 2000, it has implemented this transparent PET collection system for apartment houses, and since 2021, it was expanded to other house forms as well. Through this separate collection of PET bottles by color, it can manufacture not just low to mid-priced products, but also it can be used for other product categories, including clothes. And in 2020, the government of Ministry and Defense and the Office of Police, they took the lead in purchasing their procurement items, focusing on the PET recycled products to facilitate the purchase of those products. So these days, when you go to apartment complexes, you can see those installations to collect the transparent PET bottles. So that made the sorting and cleaning easier, and the final quality of PET flakes are much better. So if you have the separate disposal of transparent PET, that is a good way of creating the circular economy. At KEONBAEK, we have the technology to recycle the transparent PET bottles to generate EcoStar products and EcoLux products. Those are our brand names. And just to explain those brands to you simply, EcoStar is like a vegan filling that can replace duck down and goose down. And also the thickness is about 1/50th of the thickness of hair. So it can be used as yarns for your clothes and also for shoes, towel, filter, and banner as well. In case of EcoLux, this is the sound absorption material that has very excellent warmth and cushioning effect. It can be used for sound absorption, also for warm blanket and sleeping bag as well. So reducing the use of PET bottles are of course the prerequisites. However, after you use the PET bottles, the best thing you can do is to separate them properly and recycling them properly so that CO2 and greenhouse gas emission would be minimized so that we can protect the environment and the planet and guarantee the sustainable ESG management.
Thank you, Mr. Park. Last but not least, we have Mr. Dong-hyun Ham to present the final presentation of the day. He is the CCO of City Oilfield, and he's here to give us insights into how his company adds value to the environment. Please give him a warm welcome.
예, 도시의전 사업본부장 함동현입니다. 네.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction.
For plastic waste treatment, incineration, which burns the plastic, landfill, which you bury it underground. 잠시만요. Sorry. Landfill, which you bury it underground, and traditional pyrolysis, which you melt them. For incineration, smoke is inevitable, and it causes civil complaints global-wise. In the case of landfill, especially for South Korea, there is a limit of space causing regional conflicts. Lastly, as you can see on the screen, traditional pyrolysis is just another incineration method that requires additional fuel for combustion. And when you ignite using a burner, it catches fire from the inside, then rotates, burning what's inside evenly. Since it is also a combustion method which can be proven by the facilities having chimney, it can never be smoke-free. To wrap up, incineration, landfill, and pyrolysis are the three existing plastic waste treatment methods. We, the City Oilfield, does not burn, bury, or melt plastic waste. Therefore, City Oilfield has a disruptive technology with benefits and cost advantage compared to existing technologies. When heat energy under 300 degrees is transferred to ceramic balls attached at inner part of the RGO facility, it then emits strong wave energy, cutting the plastic molecular rings and restoring it to the original form, oil. City Oilfield's technology is completely different from those of the traditional ones. Three differences are operation temperature, non-combustion type using only electricity, and lastly, environmentally friendly facility with no chimney for the whole process. Currently, City Oilfield has completed all empirical studies using the joint demonstration facilities established with Korean government agency called Metropolitan Landfill Site Management Corporation. Through this site, we have acquired 2 patents and a new excellent technology certification for the whole process after a strict screening by the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy on 2021, December 7. This is City Oil Field's RGO technology, which stands for Regenerated Green Oil. It is composed of a primary decomposition treatment facility and a secondary refining facility. This is our first decomposition facility that produces heavy oil from solid waste. As you can see on the diagram, circles represent ceramic balls, and the red one being the heater rod. As the electric heater rod heats inner temperature till 270 degrees, ceramic balls will react by emitting wave that only affects and decomposes the molecular structure of plastic into oil mist, whatever the input was. It is then stored in an intermediate storage tank. This is our second refining facility. It refines heavy oil from first facility into refined oil to a customer satisfactory level. Looking at the diagram, blue colored is where the ceramic balls are. Cracking reaction happens when liquefied heavy oil makes contact with the ceramic balls, transforming it into light oil. To summarize, solid waste plastic is decomposed into 9 to 40 carbon ring heavy oil through first physical catalytic reaction, which then is decomposed into 9 to 15 carbon ring light oil through second chemical catalytic reaction. This is our plant layout for the 24-ton facility, one set. If necessary, multiple sets can be infinitely expanded in parallel. To wrap up, collected waste is put into City Oil Field's RGO process, then extraction of oil as raw material undergoes, and remaining residues can be used as solid fuel. The raw material is reused to make plastic, completing a chemical recirculation. From the next page, I will give you a detailed explanation of non-traditional City Oil Field facilities by comparing them with traditional pyrolysis technology. As you can see on the left, pyrolysis technology requires auxiliary fuel for combustion, whereas City Oil Field's RGO system is non-combustion type, needing no other than electricity. Input method is also different, with City Oil Field's RGO system being fully automatic and traditional pyrolysis being manual. Unlike traditional pyrolysis, which is still manually done, doors were also automated, which can be opened inside a safe operating room with just a press of a button. For the energy source, burners are used to heat until 10,000 degrees for traditional pyrolysis, but City Oil Field has indirect heating facilities which uses only electricity, being excluded from air pollutant emission facilities. Traditional pyrolysis systems are classified as an incineration facility by the Ministry of Environment, but on the other hand, indirect heating facilities that uses only electricity, such as City Oil Field, are excluded from air pollutant emission facilities under the Clean Air Conservation Act. Furthermore, rotary kiln method that evenly burns raw materials is used for traditional pyrolysis. City Oil Field facilities are fixed, so it is convenient with little vibration or noise and above all, safe. The City Oil Field cooling method ensures both stability and safety in a way that allows internal temperature control through the blower to enable continuous process operation. This was possible because our equipment is fixed type that does not rotate. In addition, City Oil Field has refining facility that produces high quality refined oil from first decomposition treatment facility, which no other traditional pyrolysis company does. Last but not least, black smokes are emitted from combustion type traditional pyrolysis, but our system is a sealed process having no chimney, so it's relatively eco-friendly. City Oil Field has been inspected by an investigative agency sent by the Ministry of the Environment to conduct a 24-hour inspection to determine whether gas was generated between the actual operations. Results show that there are virtually almost no air pollutants by being tested below 2%. Regarding the air pollution test standard, all the categories were below the atmospheric emission standard. So when pure plastics such as PE, PP, PS is inputted, 80% or more is restored into high quality refined oil. And for the mixed waste, approximately 40% is restored. Remaining 40% residue is not ash, but carbide that can be used as a solid fuel because it remains intact. In the end, refined oil can be used as industrial fuel for power generation facilities and factories, and also can be used as raw materials for remaking plastics, like in GS and Hanwha. This is a test report from K-Petro for refined oil. You can see it as a diesel and kerosene quality-wise under the Petroleum and Alternative Fuel Business Act. Korean government-owned power plant has tested whether City Oil Field's refined oil can be used as fuel oil for its power plant. In particular, they also conducted a test on whether harmful substances were generated during the combustion, and the test results show that there were no harmful substances at all, with a total of 0 of dioxin and furan. For GS Group, City Oil Field has been supplied with waste from GS Construction. Then the regenerated naphtha produced from City Oil Field RGO facility was taken by GS Caltex to produce plastic lunch boxes. So Korea Environmental Corporation has announced this as a practical example of material recirculation and chemical recycling. These are the residues after the mixed plastic waste input. Exterior of instant noodle bags are restored into oil, and inner aluminum is at a recyclable status. Letters and pictures on paper cups and newspaper are intact in a form of carbide that contains an energy source. This is the evidence that only plastic components were decomposed using wave energy, not combustion. These carbide residues go through segregation, where heavy metals, scrap metals, sand, and so on were settled, and only light carbon components floated on the water. These carbon components were analyzed and was determined as charcoal, which had a calorific value of 5,000 to 9,000 kilocalories that satisfies all of the Korean solid fuel quality standards. This is a report that the residues can be used as solid fuel, according to an analysis by the government institution. Currently, various local governments in Korea are trying to use City Oil Field facilities as a pre-treatment concept. If all waste that are being incinerated are first put into City Oil Field facilities, half of the waste, which is mostly plastics, will be decomposed by wave energy, and they will be restored to high quality refined oil in an eco-friendly way, which can be then sold. Then if you incinerate the remaining that's not plastic, you can reduce the amount of incineration by half, and also incinerate it by generating less environmental hazards. Lastly, Jeju Samdasu, Korea's largest bottled water company, has conducted a public campaign to use the City Oil Field RGO method to deal with labels and lids that are currently not being processed. Well, of course, other than PET bottles that are well recycled. Companies that deal with plastic across Korea can actualize ESG management using cases such as Jeju Samdasu as a role model. It is the law of nature that all living things that end their life go back to where they come from and circulate. But there's one substance that goes against this law, and that's plastic. Plastic being an environmental hazard is due to the fact that it does not circulate. With city oil field, plastic can finally follow the law of nature. City oil field will complete new circulatory economy from plastic waste and also ESG management of companies all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we will begin a panel discussion. We will discuss potential cooperation ideas, activities for the circular economy. So could I have all the presenters for this session please come forward for this segment? Ms. Hee-sun Kim, Mr. Hee-dong Kwon, Mr. Dayyoung Yoon, Mr. Kyung-taek Park, and Mr. Dong-yeon Ham. Please come join us. The panel discussion will be 30 minutes in length. And before we begin, allow me to introduce the moderator for this segment, Dr. Junu Shrestha, Senior Environmental Specialist at the World Bank. Please welcome her. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for your very insightful discussion speeches. Coming here today, I work on plastics, especially in the East Asian region for the World Bank, and going through all your range of presentations, it really enlightened how much Korea has done. We always hear Korea has advanced, but to listen and see here all the details was very enlightening. One of the key things being Korea as a resource-limited country, it didn't let itself be hampered by this resource limitation with advances in technology like you shared today and operational know-how. You actually you actually overcame that barrier. And this is the kind of experience and know-how that the work that we do at the World Bank and in the client countries need. And hopefully we can bring that knowledge to the countries that we work in and share that information. So, and I really do appreciate the range of information throughout the plastics value chain that you shared today, from all the way from production, recycling, landfill, upcycling, incineration. So every question, every part of the value chain was touched. So appreciate that very much. So my first question, let me get Ms. Kim. Thank you very much. In the region, we're dealing with a lot of plastic pollution, and countries are also very much interested in reducing this issue. One of the things that they're trying to do is, just like in Korea, EPR system.
Yeah.
But the capacity range is very different between what we see in our countries and what Korea has. One main question that I have is, before Korea enacted its EPR system, right, what were the building blocks for Korea on which EPR systems stood, and how long did it take from its policy to implement successful implementation?
죄송한데 이거
왜안 되셨지?
되나요? 죄송합니다. 잠시만요. 네. 저기요? 네네네. 어느 정도 해주시면 안 돼요? 네네네. 아, 네, 죄송해요. 죄송해요. 네네네. 네. 네.
One of the representative policies about recycling in Korea is EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme. And we also have waste levy system, meaning that in order to dispose waste, the cost should be shared among producer, consumer, and retailers. And we also need a collection system for wastes. And once the collection system is established, then we sign voluntary arrangement for 5 years for fixed items. And the next step is EPR system. And EPR is a 20-year-old system in Korea. And water purifier, filters, and other items are falling under this scheme. PE, PVC, and other new items will fall under voluntary arrangement and then to EPR system. About 5 years. It takes about 5 years for each new item to reach EPR. So those are the steps you need to take before you reach EPR stage.
Valuable for us to really understand and timeline. As we speak, we're trying to develop a roadmap for some of the client countries on plastic reduction, and EPR plays a very important role there. So it's valuable to understand what's the realistic timeline for such
네.
work.
네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you.
네, 발표 감사합니다.
We have had a couple other presentations as well. So one of the questions that's always long-standing with the SLC is, you have had the successful cooperation with some of the developing countries that you showed, like in Sri Lanka, also in Bhutan. What were the lessons learned there? Because taking technologies like you showed, coming from landfill gas capture all the way to CERs, that's not easy, right? Taking it to Sri Lanka, Thimphu, what were the, again, lessons learned while doing that? And what are the challenges you're still seeing?
So at SLC, we are doing some exchange projects with overseas countries. And during those projects, some lessons that we have learned, well, it depends on time and the situation. The government policy can be changed and the focal point of different projects can change. And last year, there was the Glasgow-Paris Agreement being signed at Glasgow, the UK last year. And because of that meeting in Korea, greenhouse gas reduction, decarbonization were main focus points of the government. And at SLC, we have been continuously working on the decarbonization. However, there was no time like today where the government has been putting a lot of emphasis on that importance. And I think that is putting a lot of impetus and driving force in our effort. Then, how can we get more effective outcome from our exchange programs? If I can think about that, then when we were doing those projects at the beginning, we had like ODA financing, like KOICA financing mobilized to set the infrastructure in developing countries to allow the gas capture and have the infrastructure for that. That was the first approach. And if the infrastructure is created in developing countries, that can help us get successful outcome. The reason why I'm saying this is because in many developing countries, their landfills are not operated properly. It means that from those landfills, they don't have the facilities to capture the leachate or gas emitted. That is what we have learned. So I believe that through ODA projects, first we have to have the infrastructure investment to set the foundation. And then as a follow-up project, we can have the gas capture facilities being properly operated through the cooperation between those countries and SLC. In the future, when we do additional overseas exchanges, our focal point would be considering the local situation and taking a phased approach. Those are what we are reviewing currently.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwon. Now, up with Mr. Hyun, thank you very much for the new concept of upcycling, really bringing in the circularity into the discussion. This is where everybody is trying to go, recycling to upcycling and circular economy, right? What we would like to know is you've shown that it, with different sort of plants, upcycling centers throughout the country, that it is upscalable, doable. Could you share what were the key factors there, right? What are the key factors for upcycling to be espoused by the public, right? There are people involved in it, interested in it, and also from the government sector, what kind of support you needed to have sort of a scalable effort on upcycling?
Actually, we have been struggling with that issue for a long time. First, the government needs to offer supportive policy, of course. Policy has a very important implication. For example, right to repair. The government needs to guarantee right to repair for its general citizens so that people can value more about their belongings, and they will try more to repair broken things. And also, one of the issues we experience a lot is we usually consume a lot of plastics or vinyls when we get our food delivered. But if you grow your own food and if you harvest it and cook it for yourself, then the amount of garbage generated will be reduced drastically. But that is not realistic in city, right? So Construction Act needs to be revised. Because, for example, if the government makes it mandatory to make a field for some fruit harvest for collective housing, then that would be really helpful. And if the citizens are provided with the tools, repair tools for their furniture or other fixtures in collective housing, that would be helpful as well. Or the experts can be dispatched to help out novice citizens in order to help them to repair fixtures or other furniture items. So we need to pursue future-oriented approach. We need to depart from simple mass production. We need to increase life of products, and that needs supportive policies from the government. That's what general public really need. And those policies are already implemented in other advanced countries. So even when we live in cities, there's a ray of hope that we can reduce garbage. Many citizens are giving up on their effort to reduce garbage simply because they are living in city. But we need disruptive government policy.
Thank you. That's a very progressive thinking that's really needed in the circular economy discussion to go beyond where we are right now. Very forward thinking. Thank you. And Mr. Park, thank you for your presentation. This is, again, one of those areas that's progressive. We're working on areas where we're trying to figure out how to recycle better. And you're talking about how to have better recycled products, designed for recycled content in better designed products, right? And those are some of the targets or issues that we are working closely together with some of the countries at advanced sort of methods. So it's very interesting for us and important for us to know when you in your facility, you said the plastic pieces from flakes to different products that you produce of high quality. One thing that we constantly hear is recycled products are not on par. People do not like recycled products, right? So what were your sort of main thoughts, main measures that you put into your production system, a quality control system, and even sourcing to ensure that your recycled content is high, but also product is attractive and usable to the ultimate consumers? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So at our company, it has been more than 40 years since we started to do the recycling of PET bottles. And before 2020, PET bottles, they were disposed separately from other waste, but PET bottles of color and transparent bottles, they were discarded together. So during the sorting process, it was quite cumbersome, and the flakes, they were not very high quality. So that is why when they were converted into those flakes, usually people thought that the products that use the recycled plastic are low quality or cheap and not very desirable. But after 2020, due to the COVID pandemic, people started to understand the urgency of the climate change and global warming, and people started to have more interest in doing the proper recycling, including that of PET bottles. And the government also started to mandate the separate collection of colored PET bottles and transparent PET bottles, and also mandated manufacturers, the producers, to not use colored PET bottles. That helped us systematically. So it made the selection process cleaner, and the cleansing process was easier. That led to a higher quality raw material to be generated for us. And with our great facility and technology, it was easier for us to use the recycled material to manufacture the final end product. So now we have no difference between the products that use the virgin plastic material and the recycled plastic material. And at our company, we have simplified and streamlined the process so that people now know that even if you purchase some items made with recycled plastic, it is not more expensive. In the past, it was more expensive because the process of doing that recycling was expensive, but now it is streamlined, so it's not expensive now.
Thank you. And we using more recycled products, and it's more attractive than virgin new products used with new virgin plastic. So this brings me to Mr. From CCO, I'm sorry, I'm missing your name. Mr. Ham. Sorry, apologies for that. That is very fascinating just by the nature of how advanced the technology is. That brings us to ask some very pertinent question in terms of how do you make such an advanced technology financially viable? It may be okay in Korea, I can see, but I would like to get an idea for that in terms of in developing countries that we work in. In countries like we work in, we just heard from Mr. Park, the separation of material is not easy. Collection is not easy, right? And you had shown one slide where if you have perfectly separated and high quality recyclable material versus when you don't have it. So could you tell us a little bit more about the difference? What is the technological difference when you have material, like source that's not perfect, financial, and how do you fill that gap? Or do you not, would you rather not, right? Thank you.
네, 도시유전의 기술의 이제 최고의 장점 중에
One of the big strengths of our technology is we don't need any pre-treatment. PE, PP, PS, and high polymer. These vinyls and plastics are decomposed, disassembled using wave power. And it affects vinyls and plastics. If there are mixed or composite wastes, that waste energy will only affect the vinyls and plastics and transform them into oil. Pre-treatment costs a lot in Korea, and our technology gets rid of pre-treatment, so it is a very cost-effective, cost-efficient technology. In Europe, a separated garbage discharge system has reached mature stage. So more oil yield is expected in European countries, but in the case of developing countries, garbages are not effectively discharged in a separated manner. If that is the case, even that is the case, we can apply our technological process. So it can be readily adaptable in developing countries as well, because we don't need any pre-treatment or sorting.
Thank you very much for that answer. We have a few minutes left, and I would like to pose one or two extra questions, if I may. So I've shared this a couple times already, that we are interested in developing countries to sort of extract knowledge and know-how from Korean expertise and share it with the developing nations. Part of the reason also is, I think, number of you shared, there is a regional impetus. One being GHG, another being just plastic pollution in the region. The region is one of the highest sources of plastic pollution. I think 6 out of 10 rivers in the region input the maximum amount of plastics into the oceans of the world, right? So without the regional sort of work, collective work, there's not going to be a big impact. Not a national only, it has to be more regional. So support to these countries are what we're looking for as well. So in that way, if would like to have this expertise brought to the other countries, what do you see as a private sector in Korea, as a public sector in Korea, your potential role? An interest, right? Your interest, your role, and sort of how can we as MDB facilitate that role for you? If you could share that, that would be very, very helpful to us. Thank you. And it's to everybody.
이제 공단에는 솔직히
In Korea Environmental Cooperation, we worked with other developing countries, including Malaysia and Indonesia. And we shared the EPR mechanism with Malaysia recently. Actually, there was a request from Malaysian government, so we have plans to share our expertise. And we also want to share cutting-edge technology about waste management, waste treatment with Vietnam. So yes, we signed MOU with Vietnamese government in order to transfer that technology. And there are other candidate partner countries in developing world. So we have International Cooperation Department who can share information with the developing countries. So if you have any interest in such a partnership, please come visit our office to see if there are any existing MOUs, and you can find out what kind of detailed opportunities are awaiting. And computerization may require some money, so MDBs can support that financing, I think.
아까 ODA 사업
So during for ODA, first is to get the financing, and the second is to create the project, the proper project form to implement the work properly. And I think that World Bank, ADB, and GCF, those MDBs, I believe that you have some fund at hand. And with the fund, I believe that there should be some room to support feasibility test study and design. So those funds can be mobilized at early phase of project in Korea. There are some, for example, there could be some projects where many Korean entities might be interested, like a reduction of greenhouse gas emission. So in those cases, public institutions and private sector companies can create like a consultative body to join together in projects together to create the proper foundation for projects. Then we can get the financing from MDBs, and also maybe we can find a way to get additional co-financing by using that kind of consultative body. If those structures are created, I believe that we can resolve the greenhouse gas emission issue and the decarbonization issue that the entire community, the global community, is faced with. So I think that could be an answer to finding a solution in cooperating with MDBs.
이
So the lessons we learned from Upcycling Center can be shared with other countries. We actually implemented co-projects with 2 countries. First, Abu Dhabi in UAE. they requested partnership to the Seoul Metropolitan City Government, and we provided our consulting. And Pokhara City of Nepal also made a request to Seoul Metropolitan City Government. And PET bottle garbage is generated a lot in the mountainous area in Nepal. And in the case of UAE, once oil energy is depleted, they are planning for upcycling in order to deal with garbage and waste in their country. And public sector has enough money in UAE. But the problem is capacity building in communities. So that was the big homework as a result of consulting. So I think there's a role to play by research institutes. So research institutes can help to build capacity among the general public or among communities. And one of the issues in public sector is sustainability. Efforts need to be sustained even when there's a staff turnover. And in the private sector, even when the public sector makes a huge investment in order to establish a building or facilities, sustained operations of those facilities will be possible only when private sector participate. So facility operations need to create profit. Only then facility operations can be sustainable. The operators can be local players or foreign players. It could be 10 years or 15 years. The projects need to create profit for 10 to 15 years minimum. So, under the healthy governance, private sector players need to play their own role. UNEP and KOICA and Seoul Metropolitan City Government are having a lot of discussion about this sustainable operation of facilities.
예, 저는 뭐 간단하게.
Well, I will make it very simple. As already mentioned, we are actually in the upstreaming process in the PET recycling. So we alone cannot do the PET recycling. We need the downstream players in Asia. Japan and Taiwan and Korea are the only countries that can manufacture high value-added finished goods to be manufactured by using the recycled PET flakes. So I think that each country should have the system to do the proper sorting and separation. And just like we have in Korea, I think that those countries also need to have like a government-mandated separation of colored PET bottles and transparent PET bottles.
환경 문제 관련해서는 사실 이제
So when it comes to environmental issues, my personal impression is the level of awareness is lower in developing countries compared to European countries or other advanced countries. Plastics are not garbage. They can be profitable once they are converted into raw material again. Once the wasted plastics are converted into raw material. So we need to raise awareness across the globe. Once that is achieved, I think more cutting-edge technologies will be adopted across the world.
Thank you very much for your time and sharing very rich presentation and insightful answers to these questions. They will be very helpful and useful in the work that we do, and hopefully we'll collaborate, meet each other more. Thank you very much.
Yes, a huge thank you to all our presenters and our moderator for the informative and also engaging discussion. Thank you very much.